these things, because how do you monetize friends? Vaynerchuk says, there's no ROI on your mother, right?
Yeah,
Which is the same kind of thing here, where there's a pitchman that gets between the two of you. So, the confusing thing for a lot of consumers, a lot of brands, is what application do we hunker down in? So many of them. Oink, for example. People have invested their efforts and their time into these companies, and then they disappear.
Disappears. I know.
And then it's all of that social that they built up. What is that? I mean, all of a sudden, in the web days, and you know this, you took a link off and it was unarchived. It disappeared. What happens now when all these things disappear? I
think they just disappear. I honestly think that we are just consuming so much content, so many different apps, that apps become disposable. You either have to hit it big within the first 6 months or whatever it might be, or it's done, right? Or it's gone. And that's worrisome. That means you have to. It is brutal. It's not a kind world out there in the mobile space right now. However, I think that's just the way that things are, and I don't think it's going to necessarily get any better.
I'm really impressed with the extent of international penetration of mobile devices in China, in India, Africa. And I'm also fascinated by the old adage, the medium is the message. And I'm wondering if you have any sense of the global social implications, cultural implications of changes in the way, the homogenizing effect of the way that people are beginning to interact and communicate.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I mean, what's always interesting here when we talk about what's happening in Canada and the US for that matter is that we know in other parts of the world, like South Korea, for example, technology and mobile, it's so much more advanced there, and the tools are that much more advanced and that much more integrated into people's lives. As far as the social implications of some of these tools, I have to go back to what I think in my gut is that we will learn how to adapt, and the technology can be a good and positive thing in many of these communities. I don't see I don't see risks as much as perhaps some people would.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's certainly I think they've documented how developing nations are influenced by North America. I mean, on that same trip where I climbed up that volcano, Mount Rinjani, I labored to the top only to get handed a fresh cold Coke. Right? So, I mean, the influence is pretty astounding, and it's just the accelerant. I think mobile is the accelerant for that influence. It's pretty, and it's not stoppable. But I think that what happens is that if you went to Europe 10 years ago, if you went to Asia 10 years ago, there was a company called NTT Docomo that was selling ringtones and making billions of dollars doing that. And we looked at that and said, text messaging? What is that? That's never going to, I'll never do that. So the influence is both ways.
Definitely, and what I'm seeing more and more of, again, and I'm putting sort of my media hat on right now, is that many of the apps that are rising in popularity, it used to be a year ago that all the apps were built in the US, some in Canada as well. I'm seeing more and more apps that are infiltrating the market over here that are from like Gabby's from Denmark, I believe. So many of these international companies are figuring out a way to promote and get their apps into the smartphones of people in our part of the world. And I think also that's something to pay attention to, is that because the technology is so much more advanced in many other places as far as how rapid they're innovating, that I think we need to be aware of that.
Yeah, we got to move away from North America-centric thinking.